The sound that changed everything was not the kick itself, but the sharp, hollow echo it made against concrete, a sound so sudden and cruel that it seemed to freeze the air in the parking garage. It was the sound of power abused, of fear made visible, of a woman collapsing inward as much as she collapsed to the ground. In that moment, beneath flickering fluorescent lights and the indifferent ceiling of gray cement, one brutal act exposed a lifetime of quiet suffering, and set into motion a chain of events no one there would ever forget. If you believe that kindness still matters, that courage can come from unexpected places, and that second chances can rewrite even the darkest moments, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this exist to remind us that humanity is not lost. The parking lot smelled faintly of oil and damp air, the kind of place people hurried through with eyes down and keys clenched between fingers. It was late afternoon, the hour when daylight still clung stubbornly to the edges of the city, but shadows had already begun to stretch long and cold across the concrete floor. A woman sat on the ground beside a fallen grocery bag, apples rolling away like silent witnesses, leafy greens crushed beneath her knees. Her coat was thin for the season, her scarf loosely wrapped, her hands shaking as she tried to shield herself from what had already happened and what she feared might happen again. Her face was pale, eyes wide with shock, lips trembling not just from pain but from something deeper, something practiced, resignation. The man standing over her wore a tailored suit, polished shoes, and an expression hardened by entitlement. His posture was rigid, chest forward, jaw tight, as if the world itself owed him obedience. This was not his first act of cruelty, only the first performed in a place where strangers could see. He had followed her down here in a rage sparked by something trivial, something not worth remembering, because the reason had never mattered. Control was the point. Fear was the language he spoke fluently. She had learned long ago how to make herself small. She curled inward now, arms crossed protectively, as if shrinking could make her invisible. Years of emotional erosion had trained her to believe that silence was safer, that endurance was strength. Each time she told herself it would be the last time, each time she believed an apology, a promise, a moment of tenderness that came after the storm. And each time, the storm returned. The kick came quickly, brutally, his polished shoe striking her side with a force that knocked the breath from her lungs. The pain radiated outward, sharp and blinding, but the humiliation cut deeper. Around them, cars sat quietly, metal shells reflecting the scene without reacting. Somewhere above, engines hummed, people laughed, life went on. But not everyone was unaware. At the far end of the garage, a man in military fatigues had just stepped out from between two parked vehicles. His movements were controlled, alert, the posture of someone trained to read environments the way others read words. Beside him walked a German shepherd, powerful and focused, its ears pricked forward, muscles coiled with disciplined energy. The dog sensed the shift in the air before the man fully registered it, picking up on fear, aggression, the subtle cues of danger that no training ever truly forgets. The man had served years in places where chaos was constant and cruelty was weaponized. He had seen fear etched into faces under very different skies, but the look on the woman's face stopped him cold. It was familiar in the worst way. It was the look of someone who had been surviving rather than living, who had learned to expect pain as part of the ordinary rhythm of existence. His body reacted before thought fully formed. Every instinct honed by years of discipline surged forward. This was not about heroics or drama. It was about right and wrong, about stepping into the space where harm was happening and refusing to allow it to continue. The man in the suit did not notice them at first. He was too focused on asserting dominance, on the release that cruelty falsely promises. When he raised his foot again, it was not anger that drove him now, but habit. The German shepherd moved. There was no bark at first, only a low, resonant growl that seemed to vibrate through the concrete. It was a sound of warning, controlled and unmistakable. The suited man froze mid-motion, confusion flickering across his face as he turned toward the noise. What he saw shattered his sense of superiority in an instant. The uniform, the stance, the dog at heel, it all communicated something primal and undeniable. This was not a man who would look away. This was not a situation that could be bullied into submission. The Navy SEAL stepped forward slowly, deliberately, placing himself between the woman and her attacker. His presence was calm but immovable, like a wall built from resolve rather than stone. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The authority he carried was earned in places where hesitation meant death, where protecting the vulnerable was not an abstract concept but a daily necessity. The woman watched through blurred vision, unsure if this was real or another fleeting hope that would dissolve as quickly as it appeared. Her heart pounded, torn between relief and terror. Hope had betrayed her before. The suited man took a step back, his confidence cracking. He tried to regain control, to posture, to assert dominance, but the balance had shifted. The German shepherd's eyes never left him, not with rage, but with a focused intensity that promised consequences if the line was crossed again. Other people began to notice. A few stopped at a distance, uncertainty written on their faces. No one wanted to be involved, but no one could ignore what was unfolding now. The isolation the woman had felt moments earlier began to fracture. The seal crouched slightly, not lowering his guard but making himself less imposing to the woman behind him. He extended a hand toward her, not touching, just offering support, an option. For a moment she hesitated, years of conditioning urging her to refuse help, to protect the men who hurt her, to minimize her own pain. But something in the stillness, in the way this stranger stood without expectation or judgment, allowed a crack to form in the armor she had built around herself. She reached out. Her hand was cold, trembling, but when their fingers met, something shifted. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was the first step away from the edge she had been standing on for so long. Security was called. The suited men protested, attempted excuses, tried to reshape the narrative, but the witnesses, the bruises already blooming on the woman's skin, the quiet authority of the seal, all worked against him. Control slipped through his fingers, replaced by consequences he had never believed would apply to him. As the situation unfolded, the German shepherd remained close to the woman, sitting calmly, offering a grounding presence. She found herself focusing on the steady rise and fall of its chest, the warmth radiating from its body. Animals did not lie. They did not manipulate. The dog's quiet loyalty felt like a promise that safety was possible. Time stretched, then slowly began to move again. Paramedics arrived, their questions gentle but direct. The woman answered in fragments at first, then more clearly, each word a small reclaiming of her voice. She realized with a strange sense of disbelief that she was being listened to, that her pain was being acknowledged without dismissal. The seal stayed nearby until he was sure she was not alone, until the structure around her felt solid enough to hold. He did not offer speeches or platitudes. He did not frame himself as a savior. He simply did what needed to be done, then stepped back, allowing the process to continue without him at the center. As the ambulance doors closed, the woman caught one last glimpse of him and the dog standing together under the harsh lights. For the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not fear. Not dread. Possibility. Recovery was not instant. Healing never is. The days that followed were heavy with exhaustion, paperwork, decisions that felt overwhelming in their importance. There were moments when she doubted herself, when the pull of familiarity whispered that it would be easier to go back, to apologize, to pretend nothing had happened. But each time, she remembered the sound of that growl, the steady hand offered without demand, the way strangers had not looked away. She began to rebuild slowly. Therapy sessions where words came haltingly at first. Nights where sleep was elusive, but mornings where she woke with a little more strength than before. Support groups where stories echoed her own, reminding her that she was not weak for surviving, not broken for needing help. Months later, she returned to that same parking garage, not because she had to, but because she chose to. It no longer held power over her. The space felt smaller now, less ominous. She stood where she had once curled on the ground and breathed deeply, grounding herself in the present. Somewhere out there, a Navy SEAL continued his life, training, serving, protecting in ways most would never see. A German shepherd walked faithfully at his side, alert and ready. They might never know the full impact of that single intervention, the ripple effect that spread outward from one moment of courage. But she knew. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel anger, hope, or the quiet strength that comes from seeing someone stand up for another, please take a moment now to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. Before this story ends, we ask you one special thing: leave a comment below. Even a single word of support can mean more than you realize to someone reading it at the right moment. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is one person who refuses to look away, and one brave step toward a future that no longer belongs to fear.